I lived 102 years. The one thing I learned. Too late about love and regret. Full voiceover script. This morning, before the sun rose over the trees behind my wooden house in Virginia, I woke up to the sound of silence. At 102 years old, silence is no longer empty to me. It speaks, it reminds, it lingers in the corners of the room where laughter once lived. I sat on the edge of my bed and let my feet rest on the cool floorboards my husband laid down with his own hands in 1954. I still remember the smell of fresh-cut pine. I remember how proud he was. Now it's just me here. The kettle doesn't whistle as loud as it used to, or maybe my ears don't catch it the same way. I make my tea slowly. I sit by the window that faces the dirt road, and every morning I ask myself the same question. What did I misunderstand about life for so long? If you are young, you probably think you have time. If you are middle-aged, you probably think you are running out of it. And if you are old like me, you realize time was never the real issue at all. It was attention. I spent most of my life believing love was about staying married, staying loyal, staying strong. And I did all of those things. I was married for 61 years. I never betrayed him. I never left when things were hard. I cooked the meals. I raised our children. I ironed his shirts until my fingers stiffened with arthritis. But I misunderstood something important. Love is not measured by endurance. It is measured by presence. There were nights my husband sat in that old armchair by the fireplace, trying to tell me about his worries at the factory, and I would nod while washing dishes, half listening, already thinking about tomorrow's grocery list. I thought being there physically was enough. It wasn't. He didn't need a woman in the room. He needed my attention. I used to believe sacrifice was the highest form of love. I sacrificed my sleep, my hobbies, my dreams of becoming a school teacher. I told myself, this is what good wives do. And maybe in those days, that's what we were taught. But here is what I learned at 102. When you sacrifice yourself completely, quietly, without ever speaking your needs, resentment grows in places you don't even notice. I never yelled. I was never dramatic. But I became distant without realizing it. Not cold, just unavailable in a way that's harder to detect. I thought love meant solving problems. I didn't know love also meant sitting in them together. One winter evening, decades ago, he came home quieter than usual. I remember the snow piling against the windows. He told me they were laying off men at the factory. He wasn't sure if he'd be next. And do you know what I said? It'll be fine. God will provide. It sounds comforting, doesn't it? But it shut him down. He didn't need a solution. He didn't need optimism. He needed permission to be afraid. I see that now. When you reach my age, your memories sharpen in strange ways. I don't remember what I ate 3 days ago, but I remember the look in his eyes that night, the way his shoulders dropped just slightly when I dismissed his fear with positivity. We stayed married. We stayed loyal. We raised good children. But I sometimes wonder how much closer we could have been if I had known how to simply sit beside him and say, "Tell me more. I'm here." People think regret arrives as loud guilt. It doesn't. It arrives as gentle understanding, decades too late. After he passed, peacefully, in that same bedroom down the hall, I found his old toolbox in the shed. Inside was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't poetry. It was a list. Things Clara likes. He had written down my favorite pie, the songs that made me hum while cooking, the name of the perfume I wore in 1972, the way I took my coffee. He paid attention to me in ways I didn't always return, and that realization humbled me more than any sermon ever could. I'm not telling you this to make you sad. I'm telling you because if I could sit across from my 30-year-old self at the kitchen table, I would take her hands and say this: stop performing love. Start feeling it. There were afternoons when my children would tug at my skirt, asking me to watch them do something silly. And I would say, in a minute. That minute often never came. I was busy being responsible. Responsible is admirable, but presence is unforgettable. My son once asked me, when he was about 8 years old, "Mama, why do you always look tired when I talk?" That question pierced deeper than he ever knew. I wasn't tired of him. I was tired of carrying everything alone. But I never explained that. I just smiled and told him I wasn't tired at all. We think protecting others from our struggles makes us strong, but sometimes it builds invisible walls. Living alone at 102 gives you a lot of time to replay conversations. I don't replay the big arguments. We didn't have many. I replay the small dismissals, the half-listening, the rushed hugs, the distracted responses. Love dies in distractions more often than in betrayal. I wish someone had told me that earlier. When my husband was in his final weeks, he held my hand and said, "We did all right, didn't we?" And I said, "Yes, we did." And we did. We truly did. But in my heart, I also knew we could have done deeper. Not bigger, not richer, not more impressive, just deeper. The world will tell you to chase achievement, to build things, to secure retirement accounts, to stay productive. At 102, I can tell you the only wealth that warms you at night is connection. This wooden house creaks when the wind is strong. Sometimes it startles me, but I've grown fond of the sound. It reminds me I am still here. And being here, fully here, is something I learned too late. In my 40s, I worried about appearances. Was the house clean enough? Did I say the right thing at church? Were my children excelling? In my 60s, I worried about health, blood pressure, cholesterol, doctor visits. In my 80s, I worried about loss. Now, at 102, I no longer worry. I observe. And what I observe is this: the moments that mattered most were almost always ordinary. Not anniversaries, not Christmas mornings, but random Tuesdays when we laughed over burnt toast, an unexpected rainstorm where we sat on the porch and did nothing, a quiet car ride with no radio, just shared silence. If you are listening to me right now, I want you to pause after this ends and think about the last time you truly looked at someone you love. Not glanced, not multitasked, but looked. Did you notice their aging? Did you notice their worry? Did you notice their effort? Or were you planning your next sentence? I say this gently because I lived it. Don't wait until the house is quiet to learn how to listen. After my husband passed, the silence was suffocating at first. I kept turning to tell him things, small things, like how the neighbor painted his fence the wrong shade of blue. And then I would remember, grief is love with nowhere to go. If you still have somewhere to place your love, do it generously, not perfectly, generously. Call them back. Sit longer at the table. Let them finish their story even if you've heard it before. I used to correct my husband's stories when he exaggerated. I thought accuracy mattered. Now I realize joy mattered more. At 102, pride feels like a foolish luxury. So I'll admit this plainly. I was often right, and I would trade many of those victories to have chosen tenderness instead. The greatest lesson of my long life is not about diet or exercise or longevity. It is about attention. Where your attention goes, your love follows. And where your love consistently rests, that is what defines your life. I live alone now, yes, but I do not feel abandoned. I feel instructed. Every creak of this wooden house teaches me something. Every sunrise over Virginia's quiet fields feels like a whisper. Notice. I notice the warmth of my teacup. I notice the birds arguing in the trees. I notice my own breathing, slower now, but steady. And I think about all the years I rushed past noticing because I believed the next milestone would bring satisfaction. It never did. Satisfaction was always hiding in the present moment. If I could give you one practice, just one, it would be this. When someone speaks to you today, put everything down. Your phone, your thoughts, your defenses, and just listen. Not to reply, not to fix, not to impress, just to understand. You might feel awkward at first. I would have. Silence used to scare me. I filled it quickly. But silence is where truth shows up. I used to think living to 102 meant I must have done many things right. Now I think perhaps I simply had more time to understand what I got wrong. And that is a gift, too. Do not wait for 102 years to soften. Do not wait for a funeral to say the deeper words. Do not wait for the house to become quiet before you learn how precious the noise was. I sit here now, hands spotted with age, heart slower but wiser, and I feel a strange peace. Not because I was perfect, not because I have no regrets, but because I can finally see clearly. Love is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is attention, offered freely, without distraction. If you remember nothing else from my long life, remember this. The people in your home right now will one day exist only in your memory. How you listen to them will echo louder than anything you achieved. And when you are old, if you are blessed to be old, you will not count your accomplishments. You will count the moments you were fully there. I learned that late, but I am telling you now, so maybe you don't have to.